In the age of gods and monsters, there was a man who was destined to face the impossible. Perseus, son of Zeus and Danae, was born under the shadow of prophecy, a prophecy that foretold he would one day bring ruin to his grandfather, King Perseus of Argos. Fearing this fate, Perseus cast his daughter and her child into the sea, hoping to thwart the will of the gods. But fate, once set in motion, cannot be so easily denied. Danae and Perseus were carried by the waves to the island of Seriphos, where they were taken in by a humble fisherman. And so, Perseus grew up far from his royal lineage, unaware of the great destiny that awaited him. As the years passed, Perseus became strong and brave, a young man of noble heart. But his peaceful life was soon interrupted by the ambition of King Polydectes, the ruler of Seriphos. Polydectes had set his sights on Danae, desiring her as his queen. Yet he knew that Perseus, her son, stood in his way. In his cunning, Polydectes devised a plan to rid himself of Perseus. He announced that he was to marry another, and demanded that each man in his kingdom bring him a gift. Perseus, proud and eager to prove his worth, promised the king the most impossible gift of all, the head of Medusa, the Gorgon whose gaze could turn any man to stone. Polydectes believed that Perseus's quest would be his doom, for no mortal could hope to defeat Medusa. But Perseus was no ordinary man. The gods themselves took an interest in his fate, for he was the son of Zeus, and they would not allow him to face such a peril alone. Hermes, the messenger of the gods, and Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, appeared before Perseus. They gave him the tools he would need to face the Gorgon, a gleaming sword that could pierce her scales, a polished shield to reflect her deadly gaze, winged sandals to carry him through the air, and the helm of Hades, which would render him invisible. Armed with the gifts of the gods, Perseus set out on his perilous journey. His first challenge was to find the Graeae, the three sisters who shared a single eye and tooth between them. They alone knew the location of the Gorgon's lair. With cunning and courage, Perseus tricked the Graeae, seizing their eye and demanding that they reveal the location of Medusa. Reluctantly, they complied, and Perseus was one step closer to his destiny. At last, Perseus arrived at the island of the Gorgons, a place of death and terror. Medusa, once a beautiful maiden, had been cursed by Athena, transformed into a monster with snakes for hair and a gaze that turned all who looked upon her to stone. With the helm of Hades rendering him invisible, Perseus crept into the lair. His heart pounded in his chest, for even the smallest mistake would mean his doom. He dared not look directly at Medusa, instead using the reflection in his polished shield to guide his hand. In a single, swift motion, Perseus struck, severing Medusa's head from her body. From her blood sprang forth Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a giant of great strength, both born of her union with Poseidon. Perseus placed Medusa's head in a magical bag, careful to avoid her gaze, for even in death, her eyes held their deadly power. On his journey home, Perseus came upon a kingdom in turmoil. The Princess Andromeda had been offered as a sacrifice to appease the wrath of Poseidon, her fate sealed by the sins of her mother. But Perseus, ever the hero, would not stand idly by. With a flash of Medusa's head, Perseus turned the mighty sea monster to stone, saving Andromeda from certain death. The king, in gratitude, offered Perseus her hand in marriage, and the hero's fame spread even further. Upon returning to Seriphos, Perseus found that Polydectes had continued his cruel pursuit of Danae, but the king's reign of terror would end that day. Perseus strode into the throne room and revealed the head of Medusa, turning Polydectes and his court to stone with a single, deadly glance. But even heroes cannot escape fate. In time, Perseus traveled to Argos, where the prophecy of his birth came to pass. In a tragic twist, Perseus accidentally struck his grandfather Perseus with a discus during a competition, fulfilling the very fate his grandfather had tried so desperately to avoid. In the end, Perseus rose not only as a hero, but as a king. He ruled wisely and justly, his legacy sealed not by the monsters he had slain, but by the lives he had saved. His name would live on in the stars as both a hero and a symbol of the eternal struggle between man and fate.